Hi everybody, welcome along to the latest edition of Get Stuck In. Are we going to get stuck in this weekend? It is debatable because Jack Frost could well play a part. On Monday evening, Ascot got down to -6. Lingfield have got the fleece covers down as well in anticipation of cold nights ahead. And at Haydock, they could get a bit of snow and frost. They're due to stage a champion hurdle trial at Peter Marsh, the Skybet Rossington Main. A really good card. I hope it does go ahead. Kirkland Tellwright is a Clerk of the course. And I asked him earlier, will it go ahead?
50-50.
Right, we're recording Tuesday late morning. What are you looking at the rest of the week?
Well, we had a frost of -3 last night, and it's accompanied this morning with fog. We're probably just above zero, but the fog's not helping the thaw. The problem will be if we start carrying frost from one day into the next. We're forecast of frost Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday nights, and it then gets milder, so that Friday night might get down to -1, but not much worse than that.
Right.
So in other words, we're quite likely to have frost in the ground by a late stage in the week. So the question is whether the thaw takes place for long enough to get the frost out of the ground.
Is snow an issue?
Quite possibly. The next couple of days, if we get through to Wednesday night, then with a bit of luck, snow is behind us. But any precipitation that falls in the next couple of days will probably come as snow.
Right. Okay, so it sounds like you're sort of pushing water up a hill. Are you being optimistic, 50-50?
No, I'll stick with 50-50. But you know, that is even money, isn't it? It's not better than that.
Fingers crossed you go ahead. Thanks for the update. We hopefully see you Saturday.
Thank you, Niall.
50-50 at best is what Kirkland Tellwright send ahead of Haydock. Ascot and Lingfield must be similar. Dan Barber and Martin Dixon. Are we going to get any action this weekend?
We're both northwest based, and I thought it was noticeable Monday evening just how much it dropped. And when you're hearing -6 for Ascot and frost covers and it not really getting above freezing, I mean, you sort of fear the worst. But I suppose to that end, any racing's then a proper bonus, and at least we get an early crack at it.
Yeah, look, it's that time of year, isn't it? And hopefully we at least there's potentially a really good weekend of racing. I think that Winter Millions weekend, Lingfield on Sunday, we could see Noble Yates, obviously last season's Grand National winner. Yeah. You've got horses like Bristol de May, Ep9 potentially at Haydock. Good renewal, it looks like, potentially of the Supreme Trial that could throw up a bit of a left field horse for the Supreme Novice itself. So it could be and should be an informative weekend if it does go ahead. So fingers crossed. There's one horse in Ascot you've mentioned a couple of times on this programme, Blenkinsop. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, he's had a fine season, hasn't he? He's been really progressive, and the way that he won at Newbury last time out, the signs are hardly there that he's stopping his progression anytime soon. He really travelled through that race well, hit the line hard, and there could be more to come from him on Saturday. And he's trained by Henry Daly, who's skiing at present. At the minute, so it's cold where he is, and I caught up and asked him about his informed horse. One of the horses of the season has been Blenkinsop, who has been well trained by Henry Daly. Henry, has this horse sort of caught your expectations? Do you think he could do this at the start of the year?
We thought he was well handicapped if he settled when he went up in trip. But to be honest, last season when he ran over hurdles, he was so keen. We just couldn't actually run him over his correct trip. And most of the family want 2.5, 3 miles, and it just was one of those things. We ended up running him over 2 miles, and he ended up by default getting very well handicapped.
Yeah. And this year, as he meant, he's starting to get with it. I suppose as you go up in class, he's going to get a stronger run race and makes it a bit easier of a ride for him.
I mean, he's obviously gone up quite a long way, and he is still quite keen. He was at Newbury and he was at Exeter and things, but he is improving as we're going along. Yeah,
mentally he's getting with it at home.
Yeah, he's always been fine at home. It's just in a race. It's just the way he is.
I don't know if you looked at the forecast much. It looks quite cold for Ascot at the weekend.
Yeah, I mean, we have another option there. Funnily enough, there's another race in about 3 weeks later. There's another Ascot that might suit perfectly well, but it's just he seems in good heart, and I don't actually. Rather oddly, he hasn't had much of a race yet this year.
Yeah.
So, it fits in quite well to run him if it works.
I wonder where the ceiling of his ability is going to be. Do you have any sort of spring thoughts?
No, I think really it's odd to have I've never had a novice that's got, where are we now, 131. So it'll be interesting to see where we end up, because I think I hope we're better than 131, and obviously with a novice at 131 and going to be better, it makes it quite an interesting challenge to try and get him in the right races.
Well, you've done so far. You've done a fantastic job getting him in the right races. Can I quickly ask a line on Hillcrest? What a story was last season. Obviously, he's missing this term with injury. How is he?
Yeah, no, good. Mick Meagher's got him back at Trevor Hemmings's, and they scanned him, it must be 2 weeks ago, and the scans look very good, and he started his rehab, and everybody's happy with him. And Mick, again, I'm only repeating what he said, but he said when you actually feel the legs and things, they feel excellent. He said that you can barely tell that there's been an issue, so that must be good.
Yeah, fingers crossed. Henry, great to catch up. Hopefully see you at the weekend. Fingers crossed the racing goes ahead, and keep up the good work. Well done. Good to hear from Henry Daly. He'll be back in a couple of days. I'm going to say to warmer climes. Maybe not. We wish him well in his skiing. That horse has done well. Well done to Martin putting him up. But you've been keen on him?
Yeah, he's been the poster boy really for the team tracker, because he started us off nice and early. What was his opening mark? In the 90s, I think, maybe high 80s, and he's now reached 131 after a string of just thoroughly dominant performances, just powering through races. You know, he's been a huge improver. He definitely hasn't reached his ceiling off 131. We'll discuss the Ascot race later. I'll probably be looking to take him on in that at the price, but he is a thoroughly progressive horse, probably the most progressive handicapper in Britain at the moment. Okay, so Henry Daly's skiing.
Olly Murphy, another trainer. He's trainers of the Poor Prizeman. They can't afford to go away anywhere. So Henry's skiing. Olly Murphy's in Dubai. Inform Olly Murphy in Dubai. He went away. The horses are winning. I caught up with him as well. How's things, Olly?
Yeah, all good. Thanks, Niall.
I want to talk to you about Chasing Fire. He's been winning small races very, very impressively. What do you make of him?
Yeah, he's a horse I like a lot. I want to run him in one of these better races now, just see where we stand. But if he passed his next assignment now, I'd imagine he will go for a Supreme, all being well. But we're going to step him up in grade. He's always shown me plenty at home, and looking forward to taking on some more a more competitive field.
He's in the Sky Bet Rossington Main at Haydock on Saturday. If that goes ahead, will you go?
Yeah, a chance. Listen, heavy ground would be a complete unknown for him, but looking forward to taking on a better type of opposition. He's a horse who's always shown me a lot at home, and as I said, we'll kind of see how good he is now after his next test.
Yeah, no risk. The flow's well entered up. Where do you think he'll go?
Yeah, I'd say he'll probably go to Haydock Saturday. Loves heavy ground. Seems in good form. Had a very poor run his last start. He's an odd horse. He either wins or runs desperate. So, he's either very good or very bad. But when he's good, and he'll love heavy ground, and that race could suit him well.
Similar comments could apply to good old Itchy Feet. He's been obviously a star. We know what he'd done in his earlier days. I see you've got him entered back over hurdles at the weekend.
Yeah, just another angle now. I actually thought he was unlucky not to be placed or go a lot closer than he went at Cheltenham. He just didn't quite jump well enough late on. So we've entered him back over hurdles. He looks to have an attractive mark of 138 off his previous earlier form, and it might just be a nice angle to go down.
But it sounds like Chasing Fire is a horse, them horses that you crave, them Grade 1 winners that hopefully in the making that he can progress down that line. He could be top class, couldn't he?
Yeah, I hope so. I hope so. Very much looking forward to obviously taking on a better type of horse. I keep saying his work's been very good. He's certainly one of my better novices, and I'm really looking forward to running and seeing where we stand.
Yeah, good stuff. Hunter's Call's also in that valuable race at Taunton at the weekend.
He is obviously not getting any younger, but conditions will suit him well. He still looks to retain plenty of ability off his first run this season, so it'd be great to think he could win at the grand old age of 12. And he's been a star for me, as everyone knows.
And you're having a couple of days off, a well-earned rest. They're not missing you. The horses look well at Wellerby at the weekend. Won you at a double. Yeah,
no, horse running well. Like plenty of people, I flew back to a lot of mine, Niall. So I've had a very quiet fortnight, but had a couple of winners Saturday and Wetherby, which was good. I've got a lot of horse to run now for the second part of the season. I'm actually in Dubai for 10 days myself. So I'm not missing the English weather at the moment, but back in the next couple of days, and hopefully there'll be plenty of racing on over the weekend.
Yeah, good stuff. Fingers crossed the weather It does go the way of you at the weekend, and for all racing fans. Ollie, great to catch up. We'll see you soon. If racing does go ahead, he could have a busy weekend, runners all around the ground, not chasing far. He's beat nothing, but he looks proper.
He does, and I was at Market Racing when he made a winning hurdling debut earlier on in the season, and you can just tell from the way that they talk about the horse, even back then, that they love him. You know, they think he could be a serious prospect, as Ollie's been telling you there, and he looks it, doesn't he? He's got gears, he jumps well, he's a real professional. There's not sort of any greenness about him, and the races are easy to knock in terms of the form of them, but he's won by wide margins, he's quickened up well, he's put up fast closing sectionals. His form in a bumper last season is a little bit stronger when he beat a subsequent bumper winner at Wetherby, and again that day he showed a high cruising speed. I think he's a possible for the Supreme, isn't he? He's only rated 133 at the moment. He obviously needs to go higher, but it looks a fairly thin race behind Facile Vega, and he's one of those horses, I think, trained in Britain that has the potential to kick on another 12 or 15 pound before the end of the season.
You hear about interviews just saying, the Ruston Domain if it's on or whatever, but it's just straight to the Sky Bet Supreme. That's where he's going, and he believes he's that class, and that's where he's going. So fingers crossed he does. Haydock does get to go ahead at the weekend, and we do get a chance to see him. He's a very, very exciting horse. Talking about exciting horses, Patrick Mullins and his father Willie have got a couple of them. He's coming up very shortly. Okay, it's time now to be joined by Patrick Mullins once again. How many times do we say this on this show? But another fantastic weekend. Probably start with Impaire Passe. How good was he in the Sky Bet?
Yeah, he was very good. You know, he showed he stayed very well in Nace over 2-3 on heavy ground, and on the inside track at Punchdown, that course the other day. He showed a lot of speed. They didn't go overly fast, small field, and he quickened up well off the home bend. I mean, I loved how he jumped at the last. How he was so quick and nimble at the last, even though he put down. So it showed a lot of versatility to him.
Your dad's excellent record in this race. All them winners have went on to be a supreme horse. Do you see him that way?
Well, look, it's too early to say, really. But I know Michael Dagenais won that race before as well. He went the Ballymore. I wouldn't get too caught up in thinking that all the other horses went to the Supreme. I don't think Willie really thinks that way. It's what horses are ready at the time. We have so many horses to fit in here, there, and everywhere. So it's not a case of picking one horse out and saying he goes there. To me, he could run in either race. He could win either race. He has the ability and the attributes for either race. So it's too early to say. Look, we'll have to see how other horses run between now and then. And I imagine he might have another run as well. So the cards aren't all on the table yet.
Facile Vega, how's he at home?
He's in great form. I imagine he'll go to DRF, but Dave Porter's very happy.
Right, good stuff. Blood Destiny, he was good at Fairyhouse, making all?
He was very visually impressive. I'm not entirely sure it was a truly run race. I'd say Davey, it looked to me like everyone wanted to drop in. Paul bounced out and went a normal gallop. He said to me his biggest worry was he was wondering had he gone the wrong course, because he said he couldn't hear anyone behind him. He said they must be ignoring me. But I'd say Davy Russell's horse ran very poorly. And I'd say he's beaten from nearly halfway, but no one's wanted to go past him. And they've all got dragged out of the race, staying behind Davy. So look, Blood Destiny could do no more than he did. But he's very, very exciting. But I'm not sure I think the race was very strange he ran.
Okay, and then Tactical Move, again, another maiden hurdle winner.
Yeah, he was very impressive. He's out of his sister, a Den woman, and fine, big, strong horse. He won a bumper in Clonmel, broke down afterwards, come back with tendons, so we give him lots of time. And we wouldn't have pressed any buttons on him at home. There has to be a huge improvement in him. And he was so keen early on. You know, when you see a horse being that keen after a long layoff, you expect him to blow up and get tired. And he probably did, but it wasn't a fantastic race, but his ability got him through. He did flash his tail. He did that with me in the bumper and Punchdown as well. So I suppose Denman had a bit of an attitude as well, but he had it in the right way.
Yeah.
But I don't think this fella stops. I think he's pretty honest, and it's just keeping him in one piece is going to be the big thing.
By your own standards, the depth you have in some of the novice chasers we talked about last week, these young herders coming through, it's ridiculous, isn't it?
It's amazing that this year, we have huge strength and depth in that novice chase department. It just seems to be a very, very strong crop. Now, a lot of them obviously are looking flashy in their beginner chases, and this our next run will tell us how good they really are when they have to meet better types of horses. But Flame Bearer did what we thought he'd do in Nace. Look, we took the hood off, we put the tongue strap back on. We changed a few things around. He dropped him a half mile in trip. And you saw, he went a real good gallop. He jumped well. He missed the last. You often see horses do that when they're that far clear, and jockeys are just trying to get from A to B. But look, he's a horse. I just think he could be as good as any of them. Yeah.
Let's talk this weekend. An Ergamine Ascot. Danger could be the elements, couldn't it? The frost on the ground.
Look, that's a worry. But there's not much we can do about that. So. Look, we're planning to go. We're planning to run. He's in great form. Imran Hadir is very happy with him. This is obviously the route we took last year. And like I said, Willie is a creature of habit. He likes to stick to what works. We got a hard race last year and we got beaten, but it didn't stop us winning in Cheltenham. Now, perhaps the champion chase last year did fall apart, and it wasn't a particularly strong race. It was more of a grade 2, really. But yeah, I think Willie was happy to stay with what happened with the route that worked last year. If you waited for DRF and then maybe it was a bit quick in Leopardstown, you're going to Cheltenham off just the one run. So this suits, and it should be a super race with Edwardstone there too.
Absolutely, looking forward to Edwardstone back after what happened at Kempton, the reigning Queen Mother champion chase, and obviously your lad will make it the race that hopefully it will be this Saturday, the Clarence House at Ascot. Quick line, Bill Away, you're going to be in action at Thurles at the weekend in the Hunter's Chase. He's been a right servant, hasn't he?
He really has. He's been around here for a long time now. He's a career hunter chaser, career pointer. He won off Tracy Gilmore, who used to look after Florida Pearl, and he finally got his day in the sun last year after being second in it twice. And he starts back. Again, this is following the route from last year. Usually he would have ran in the autumn in Fairyhouse or in Down Royal, but he got a couple of small hold-ups last year and we ended up having to go to Thurles and then to Nace. So it worked last year. We're sticking to it this year. He usually needs his first run. I'm not sure he's maybe ever won his first time out. He was unlucky one time in Fairyhouse, made a bad mistake the last. But yeah, we'd be just hoping he'll run well, not particularly concerned if he wins or not. And then he'll go to Nace in February and then on to Cheltenham again. So he's in great form, looks brilliant. Obviously, he's not getting any younger, but that Fox Hunters in Cheltenham is a race that favours kind of horses in double digits, funny enough.
Yeah, absolutely. You're all in great form. Patrick, great to catch up. We'll see you soon.
Great. Thanks so much, Niall.
Good to hear from Patrick Mullins as well. Another fantastic weekend. A host of novice hurdlers who and sort of pattern hurdlers who are very, very exciting by their own the strength and depth what they've got. How they're going to separate them, I don't know.
Just obscene. And I suppose a horse, because we've not seen a great deal of him this year, just once, who is obviously a figurehead horse for them on Saturday, doesn't get the mentions he maybe would do. Well, certainly if he was in any other stable, because it's almost diluted. He's got that many. But an Ergamine, Edwardstone, if it goes ahead, we've got it obviously significant to me because I put up Edwardstone last week on the show as my Cheltenham view for last week. I still think in what I view as a bit of a match, he is a bet. But then you're in a position where actually you don't have to worry about the 2-1, 9-4 for Cheltenham. I think he's about 6-4 to turn over an Ergamine at the weekend. Slight angle difference being that we know an Ergamine's extremely effective around Ascot. That was a massive effort on the figures last year against Shishkin in this very race. And my angle really is that he might not actually be as effective at Cheltenham, but we'll get a good test of where Edwardstone is. I think he's developed into a top-class chaser and no better marker to prove that one way or the other than an Ergamine.
It'll be exciting. We saw last year Shishkin and an Ergamine. You don't need a massive field.
Yeah, you don't. Yeah, I think that's fair as well. This is a race that people say about it. Could it be a limited handicap again like it was 30 years ago? I can see that as a discussion.
I'd prefer it if that was. You don't?
I would if it still attracted those top horses.
Yeah,
but if it suddenly became a handicap and an Ergamine didn't turn up, then you've lost it completely. So in theory, yes, but then the prize money has got to be significant enough to attract those horses. Whereas if they don't come, you've just got another good quality 2-mile handicap.
Yeah.
So be careful what you wish for, I suppose. And it is a race that has thrown up some very good performances in recent years, even with some small fields.
So maybe it's rose-tinted stuff looking back when
Desert Ochre, Panther Prince.
Yeah, thinking of those Well Chief having a crack at the Victor Chandler, as was Isio and Nordance Prince, horses like that.
It's whether that would still happen.
It possibly wouldn't.
Because of the way that horses are campaigned nowadays.
Yeah.
It is different, and I'm not sure that if you did it, that all of those horses are like they did in the 80s and 90s, would still necessarily
There
turn
is
up.
certainly an aversion to handicaps, but if you wanted a positive on that note, Alan King was all systems go to in a handicap with Edward Stone at Ascot earlier in the campaign until the weather got in the way and the meeting was abandoned. So, yeah, I really like to see it, but as Martin says, they're so infrequent nowadays, you're sort of conditioned to believe they just won't happen.
I'd love it, but I think the prize money would need to be pretty vast in order for those horses to still want to turn up.
Yeah, still dreaming of Constitution Hill if he'd have gone for that bet for the hurdle, but it's not going to happen, is it?
No, I don't think that's ever going to happen. Okay, right, coming up, talking about Constitution Hill even, and a few more in our Cheltenham Corner. Okay, the countdown is on for Cheltenham, getting closer. Lads, got a selection each of you?
Yeah, I'm looking. I know Dan mentioned Edwardstone for the Champion Chase last week. I'm looking at Grenadine for the same race. He's as big as 20-1 in places. I just think because Energumin and Edwardstone are set to take each other on if the meeting does go ahead, there's the possibility that those two horses that are so dominant in the Champion Chase market, for instance, if Energumin gets turned over, he's an odds-on shot at the moment for the Champion Chase. He'll drift out, and I think the market is open to some movement. And Grenadine as big as 20s, there's only 14 entries in the race this year at this stage, so it's going to cut up into a pretty thin field, I think, this year. He's going to go there. I think he's going to go there fresh. That's the plan, as I understand it, at this moment in time. He's got a fantastic record fresh, and for me, his two performances this season, for all that he got left behind by Edwardstone in the Tingle Creek, he still ran very well. He was probably closer to the pace than ideal, and he looks as good as he's ever looked, and they're giving him a different prep into Cheltenham this year, which I think will suit him. Ultimately, I think his price will probably be half what it is at the moment come the day.
Okay, Dan?
Gold Cup, my first year in the Gold Cup, but people seem to react to the Noble Yates is a massive runner in that, particularly if it came up soft. I just think his progress he's so significant that he is going to be borderline Galopin de Champs level potentially, particularly in a staying race. But I thought a solid option who emerged over Christmas was Statler, trying to give weight to a form winner in Manila Indo. No way would that be his track. He's a big galloping horse, and I think a few of us joke that National Hunt Chase is one of the most boring festival races we've ever seen, where he just took over from Runwell Fred and left him behind. But he's achieved a lot in little time over fences. I still don't think we got to the bottom of him, and he's a thorough stayer, which is exactly the first thing I want in a Gold Cup horse. Okay,
Statler for to see if he can go back and make it two successes at the festival in a row. Right, we've got a couple of tracker horses coming up very shortly. Okay, what's caught the lads' eye over the last 7 days, Martin?
Serendipity, a winner at Catterick. I think you were there.
I was.
Last week. And he pegged back a horse of Don McCain's called General Officer, who'd created a pretty good impression winning his previous couple of starts. I think he's quite a good horse himself. Serendipity, still quite green, but improved a lot from his hurdling debut. Showed a good attitude to run him down despite making a mistake at the last. He's a well-bred horse, half-brother to Bright Forecast, who only ran a handful of times for Ben Pauling, but was actually placed in the Bearing Bingham.
Aldeniti colours, I think.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, but he was a good horse, wasn't he? And I think that pedigree, the way that he's progressing, just gives him potential beyond what he's done so far. And
bought cheaply by Harvey.
He was, he was, and he's got potential to stay a good bit further as well. He stepped up in trip at Catterick last week to 2 mile 3. I think he'll probably end up being a 3 miler, to be honest, and that gives him more potential. So I think he's, again, horse to follow, not just this season necessarily, but probably into next autumn as well. I think he's a nice prospect.
Okay, Serendipity for Sue Smith, Dad?
Well, Stan Shepherd had a massive, one of the probably biggest winners of his career in winning the Classic Chase at the weekend. I think that could have been a double after Ginny's Destiny had he waited a bit longer on that horse. He ended up, it was a thorough test of stamina, that Leamington Novices hurdle, and I thought he engaged the leader a bit too far out. He went upside nose of the road, travelling well. They had a war, and they set it up for Grey Dawn in the Skeletons. He's a progressive horse in his own right, but I love the way he's gone through his last 2 races, both at Warwick. Maybe more handicapper than top-level graded performer as a novice, but I'd like to see him get another run into him, maybe another run after that, and then qualifying for one of those big handicaps, and I think he'd be a massive player. It's a shame the Lanzarote was when it was in the calendar, because if a race like that was a month or so away, I'd be looking at him as a very likely type for it.
Okay, there's a couple of horses, hopefully, to keep on the right side of in the coming weeks, maybe in Martin's case, the coming seasons. Okay, let's hope the racing does go ahead. Give us something for the weekend, man.
Well, I'm going for an old favourite, and it might sound obvious, but Bristol de Mai in the Peter Marsh. The handicap has dropped into 154, and I just think it's very lenient, to be honest. We know that it's his own backyard. Haydock, heavy ground, it's going to be very hard work, isn't it, there? Looking through the entries, 13 entries for the Peter Marsh at this stage. There's horses like Minella Drama has other options, probably a non-stayer. Dusart has other options. He's in other tracks as well.
Sam Brown's doubly represented, but I spoke to Anthony Honeyball earlier. It sounds like he's going to go
to the Peter Marsh.
Lingfield, I think.
Lingfield, right. Yeah. So he's another that could drop out. Yeah. And at the moment, I think Bristol's about a 6-1, 13-2 chance around those sort of odds. I think the race, again, I think it will cut up into probably a much smaller field than we imagine. As I say, 154 around Haydock on heavy ground over 3.25 miles. You think back to last February, and he went karting through that Grand National trial, ultimately got outstayed a little bit by the Galloping Bear, but that was off 159. It's only 3 runs ago, and I do think they've given him a proper chance off 154. So if it goes ahead, which I hope it does, I actually think he'll take a lot of beating round there off that mark.
Okay, Dan?
Horse more than half his age. Hon Publique, I like in that Holloway's handicap hurdle on Saturday at Ascot. It's the Blenkinsop race, as we touched upon earlier. I'm just a bit concerned it could be one of those Ascot races where, the gallop is sound, but then a second wave sprints into the straight. There's just a chance that Blenkinsop over this trip around that track gets caught out of his ground. And I like Hon Publique. He made his debut in France, 19 furlongs, heavy ground, finished second, and yet he's hardly tried the trip over here. The Sandown form behind Love Envoy is really strong, and I just thought Musselburgh came a bit too soon and the track wasn't for him. He's 10s each way, backed in this morning, and I'd suggest others do the same.
Okay, fingers crossed it goes ahead, and fingers crossed them horses run well. Yeah, it's very much up in the air forecast-wise. We all hope it goes ahead. It's good action if it does. We'll touch base again this time next week. See you soon.